Dearest, gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the town. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighborhood-friendly Kiwi Tash from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, currently writing her high vibe and loved era.
Settle down onto your favorite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favorite characters. We cover both book, TV series, and notable social media, and therefore will contain spoilers.
Okay, so before I get into the synopsis, are you trying to go smut queen on that? Deep diving.
Well, ironically, I was actually thinking about the fact that in my last episode, I gave a very, very big spoiler to a book that I am currently reading, which is Fourth Wing. I'm on the Onyx Storm because I went away on holidays and I wasn't going to potentially get up to smut parts of the book when around people. So I just have deprived myself of it for 2 weeks, which has been painful. But I actually had to edit out someone who died because I said it and then I was like, oh no, I've probably just alienated a bunch of our listeners by giving the biggest spoiler ever. So I did still talk about it, but I removed who dies. But I'm sure I gave enough.
Okay, so Di just posted that
did she finally
she finished the pod, and just as we're talking about how you said deep diving, she's like, deep diving is what I love.
That's so
I knew
funny.
She was gonna comment on that. Di, we called it. We said you were gonna comment on that.
All right, I'm voice noting this to Di right now. Di, we are literally just starting our pod recording episode as you are hearing this. And the funniest thing is, just before starting this episode today, Patty said to me, I know that Di hasn't listened to last week's episode yet because she hasn't responded to Patty's commentary and me dying of laughter. And I literally just changed my sentence of deep diving into deep diving. And you've literally just sent this. This is hilarious.
I know. That's such a meta moment.
We are in the inception.
That's so funny. Okay, so back to the studio.
Well, we are both just returning from our holidays. We've had a 3.5 week break from recording at this point. I did edit my the last podcast. I mean, I got it out. Not even, I think it was 10 hours before it was due to drop. So I left it really last minute, but I am back home. I have toured probably at this point thousands of kilometers, even thousands of miles of the South Island of New Zealand, both for my cousin's wedding and then taking my girlfriend around the South Island, who was visiting over from Australia. I am exhausted. I did not sleep very well last night, so I'm going to do my best to still be able to even read my own notes because the screen does not feel bright enough today.
Yep. And I am back from 2 epic adventures, which that's in my synopsis. But I'm back from 2 adventures. I went on my cruise and it was lovely and perfection. And, basically told everybody I was going with my Colin Bridgerton. But after re-listening to last week's pod on my way out today to go meet my new great niece, I've decided that I haven't. Smaug is...
Well, I mean, Stephen and Smaug are somewhat similar. And as I said to you...
And you've said he's Finch too.
Well, yeah. I didn't say he was Finch. He watched season 1. Actually, we finished
and he's like, that's me.
We just finished episode 5 of season 1 last night. Before I started my notes, because I was like, look, I've got to write notes tonight, bugger off. But also I can't write notes while I eat dinner. So you can watch one episode of season 1 with me and then you can go away. And he was like, I'm Finch. I'm like, yeah, my little sweetie. Which is not a bad thing because we all stand a Finch.
Yeah, we stand a Finch hardcore.
And writing my notes last night of the and I'm skipping a little, the Eros and Psyche ball just made me stand him so much harder for even just the subtle gestures that he gives to his wife is just so sweet. But back to the
Yeah,
synopsis.
my second epic adventure, Kay and I did go to New York City and see the Jonathan Larson project. And we did go out to dinner with Anne, and that was amazing and fun. And then even after her event she came back and met with us at our hotel room and brought us desserts from her shindig she was having. And Kay and I fought over those shortbread lemon things, those cookies. Those were so good.
Oh, I
But
do
yeah,
love a lemon cookie.
we had such a good time. Yeah, these were shortbread cookies with lemon curd like filling
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
top. So good. So Tangent Squad, the Tangent Queens are both back from Epic Adventures, and we miss talking the tea of the ton. Today we watch Francesca breaking the rules, and we see the first of two mirror moments on the streets of Mayfair. What happens during the day is very different from what happens at night. We also analyze word usage to decide if we agree with the Cress Eloise stands out there. Did Eloise go courting? We think Cressida's parents think so.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, mine was definitely an epic adventure. I feel like I was a little hobbit exploring. Like we got so lost one day. So Google in New Zealand is not always that accurate when you go off the main road. We were heading to a bay that I've been to many a time, but it is on a private dirt road. And Google was like, yeah, Flea Bay's down here. Like, just take this road here. And we get there and I'm like, none of this looks familiar. And it is some of the most treacherous goat paths you've ever seen in your entire life. And we get to the very end because Flea Bay has a penguin colony. So I told Ezra, we're going to go see some penguins. And we get there and I'm like, this is not Flea Bay. This is someone's private residence. This is a farm. And but they had a sign on it being like, hey, like if you'd like to gain access to the beach, just come talk to us. So I went and found the farmer. He was adorable. He has these little penguin hutches for them to come to during nesting season. And so like he took me around to them all to see if there was actually any penguins in there for the day, but obviously it wasn't the right time. And then he let us go down to his private beach. So we had the entire bay to ourselves, but very treacherous. And here I am, and this is a little bit of a TMI situation, but a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. Here I am, knickers down, doing a bush wee, and I'm like, I hear movement. Is there someone watching me? Put my knickers back on, try not to get sheet pull my knickers, putting my feet through them, just in time to see that, oh, a seal is watching me.
You're like knickers down, doing the bushwee, dying. Like a seal.
This little pervert of a seal.
I wonder if that seal wanted a kiss from a rose.
But I'm like, oh my Lord. Like, imagine I'm turned around and I just get a bite on the butt by a seal. I do not want to explain that to the ER physician. Because
That's awesome.
Seals are not the friendliest creatures. So I was like, and then I put my pants on and everything, start heading back to where we've got our little picnic spot. And Ezra starts running towards me and I'm like, do not run towards the seal. And Stephen's like, what? And I'm like, trying to like, seal, like, and he can't hear me. So I'm like, trying to like mimic what a seal looks like. And I'm like, we're on a beach in New Zealand. Like, surely he knows. Arr, arr, arr. He's like, I just thought you were just doing some weird stuff. I don't know what you were trying to tell me. And I'm like, keep our child away from the seal.
Okay, so I'm gonna give two stories from the cruise. So the first one, like obviously I'm an ambivert. Like I am a social person, but I need downtime after. And Smaug is very much introverted. He's not a start a conversation kind of person really. And we were in a venue listening to an acoustic duo. I think that was what their name was, the acoustic. And we were we're middle-aged and we were some of the youngest people on this cruise. But we had these two older ladies ask if they could sit at our table because there was no seats left. We're like, sure, come on, sit down. And of course, I can't sit with a stranger and not talk to them. That's weird. So I strike up a conversation. First of all, we find out like one lady still lives in Ohio. The other lady used to live in Ohio. She now lives in like Florida or somewhere. So we're talking about that first. And then me and the one lady start talking about zodiac signs and stuff. But then the lady that I'm next to, she leans over and how long have you guys been together? And I'm like, we're not together. It's a long story, blah, blah, blah. And, we're just talking back and forth. She goes, well, how are you guys on a cruise together? And I'm like, explain it. And I'm like, and it's, his birthday this weekend or this week. And she's like, oh, really? My son's birthday this week. And I'm like, yeah, his is on Thursday. My son's birthday's on Thursday. Okay. So I finally draw him into the conversation. Like, her son's birthday's your birthday. How funny. Small world. And then she's like, oh, how old are you going to be? He goes, oh, I turned 49. And she's like, my son turns 49. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. So then the other lady that I was talking to about zodiac stuff, she goes, oh, I wonder what time he was born. I bet they have very similar birth charts. And she's like, what time were you born? And Smog's like, I was born at 1:29. And she's like, my son was born at 1:30. Like, so close. It was crazy. And I kind of made a joke like, I already know I get along with this guy, and your son lives 30 minutes from me. Like, maybe he's the one I'm supposed to like be with or whatever, kind of joking around.
Take note, Smog. We will replace you with your birth twin.
Birth twin. Yeah, birth chart twin. And she's like, no, he has a significant other. I was like, oh, darn. And then, but who knows? Maybe he did take notes and he got scared because we had conversation. But then
Under the stars.
Another story, because we're nerdy. And
I did not know that about you two.
Yeah, we're very nerdy. So we start out our friendship. One of the first things we bonded over was Star Trek. We both love Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
I am a sci-fi girly. Star Trek is my jam. Next Generation was my favorite. But we watch like Deep Space Nine.
Tell me why I have a very deep soft spot for Data.
Data's mine. You can't have him.
Claimed him first. I mean, to be fair, I don't know that I want to procreate with a skin tone that fair, but like,
well, he's a droid. Like that was supposed to represent like they didn't get the skin right. But
yeah.
What's funny about Star Trek is, and us being undiagnosed neurospicy, he always said he was Vulcan. Like he's Vulcan.
Steven makes that joke too.
He's Spock, and he's got emotions, but he chooses his Vulcan side.
Yes.
And I always said I was Data because I have so much going on the inside and I want to feel my emotions, but when you turn on my emotion chip, it's all over the place and it's chaos.
I have always said that I am God, what's her name? The empath.
Deanna Troi. Yeah,
and
I related to her also.
And she is Greek.
Yeah. Marina Sirtis.
Yes. But it's quite funny because I always related watching, because I'm like, Steven is Data and I am the empath, like through and through. So like we are opposites.
Yeah, I always said I wanted to be Data because I would like to be able to turn off my emotion chip when it got too crazy. Because if you remember the episode where the movie where he first got his emotion chip and he's like all over the place, that's exactly how I feel. And I'm like, well, he gets to turn his off, like not fair. I want to turn mine off. But yeah, I was up until the emotion chip, I very much was like, ooh, I'm Deanna Troi. Like I feel the vibe of everyone. But when we came into Costa Maya, we're walking down pier into the port and I noticed a t-shirt that says Star Trek Cruise. And then when we're walking around the port, I see another one and I like nudge him. I was like, hey, I think that royal ship is a Star Trek cruise. I think they do a Star Trek cruise. So in true neurospicy fashion, guess who was like, when this pricing comes up, like I got to look at the pricing. So even before I got off the plane, his plane left first, the airport first. So he gets home first. So I have pricing for the Star Trek cruise for next year before I'm even off the plane.
So much money. So crushingly
It's so expensive. But next year is the 60th anniversary. So if
what time of year
Lord willing and the sun don't shine, Bill Shatner is still alive, he's going to be on it.
No.
Yes. That makes it worth the money for me.
It does make it worth the money. What time of year is it? November, was it?
February? Because it just was happening. They were in Costa Maya with us.
Just putting it out there. February is very close to both of your birthdays, and both of you will be turning 50, and treat yourself, girl. Like,
well, and the thing is, like, we know,
but on the
finances
on
for me. And then
on the flip side of it, Bridgerton is coming out 2020. Is it next year?
Next year.
So like
I want to try and fly out and
an
watch it with you.
expensive cruise and a New Zealand trip.
And then an expensive flight.
New Zealand is not a cheap country.
No, I would just be living at your house. Like I would fly there, but I'd just be living at your house doing nothing. I would bring Anne of Green Gables.
But that was basically like my girlfriend who just flew over. Like she's just built her house. Like she moved into it 5 weeks before flying here. And she got here and I'm like trying to save her every penny that I can, like cooking all the meals. Because I said to her, like, what is, I think it's really good before you go on holidays with someone, like, what is your expectations financial wise? Because otherwise you both fall into the trap of like trying to please each other.
A year and a half. Yeah, a year and a half in advance. We're going to watch Bridgerton, whatever time it comes on. But I'm going to bring Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avonlea. And maybe the continuing story.
And I will save watching the 3-part Pride and Prejudice for you.
3-part? You mean the 1995 one?
Yes, with the guy.
Yeah, I think if you just put it in now, it's like you can't tell it's 3 parts. It just plays.
Okay.
It's 5.5 hours. But I have no problem. I have no problem sitting there eating food and watching my comfort. Mm-hmm. So I have no problem with any of that.
Yeah. I
don't take me anywhere. I got to do a lot of hiking.
Yeah.
I hiked the jungle for that, man. I survived it.
Yeah, but was he walking ahead so you got the good view?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was very sweet. We were walking with an elderly couple again, and they both had knee replacements, and they thought they were going on the short, easy way because of my weight. Like they thought I chose the short, easy way, but I chose the long way because I knew Scott wanted to climb the one temple that you can climb. So I'm like, long way it is. And I'll just, I'll get there when I get there. I'm just going to take my time. And we ended up walking with them. I told them this is the long way. And they're like, oh, well, we can turn back. And then the lady goes, no, like if she's taking her time, she can do it. We can do it. We'll be a team, blah, blah, blah. And we did. We all made it. And by the last place, like she was walking better than me. She had knee replacements. I haven't had knee replacements yet. And she saved me a seat on the bench. She's like, she turns to Scott. I watched her from I'm probably 50 to 100 feet away. And I hear her. She's loud. She's like, Scott, because she walked with Scott and I walked with her husband because he was slower. And she's like, Scott, where's your friend? What's her name? And I did it again. I quit saying smog. Dang it. But she's like, what's your name? What's her name? And he said, Patty. And she's like, Patty, I saved you a seat. And I was like, oh, you're so my favorite today. So yeah, it was fun. But I was told probably 5 times by this woman that I needed to marry him before the end of this excursion.
I
like,
shall.
You need to snap him up.
I'll keep my eyebrows down. Okay.
I seriously had 3 to 5 old ladies that are like, why are you guys not married?
Deeper apologies for the tangents today. We have had, honestly, we
haven't gotten to talk about we haven't even gotten to talk about our adventures.
I know, literally this is us talking about our adventures together. Like usually Patty and I are tangent queens even outside of this podcast. Like we usually are basically attached at the hip or the at the microphone, shall I say?
Note. We're attached at the voice note.
But basically, whenever my family is around, I do not exist. I get very little time with my Australian family, who are like the other half of me. So when they are around, I am no longer a person that exists outside of that bubble. So we've had very little time. So our tangents today probably are going to be quite tangenty. But
yes, I
will get to it. So now we must make haste in today's episode.
We're back.
And now we are starting out with Francesca and Violet taking a stroll through Mayfair. They are heading towards the modiste, and Violet is lecturing her daughter on proper protocol for dancing with the Marquis Lord Samadani. Fran is deflecting her mother by stating that he may not even ask her to dance at all this time. I think Fran...
And did you notice all of the background characters?
There's quite a lot of background background characters. Actually, I never really realized how often we see, I don't know the names. I don't know if they have names, but actually they do have names because, one moment, I just need to clear.
Not all of them are your lords and ladies that are debutantes and stuff. There's a lot of married couples, and you see the men
Well,
carrying the hat boxes and the shopping stuff
the
for
one
their.
who Lady Whistledown writes about as her proof that she's Lady Whistledown, and she writes about the guy who mistreats his wife. They're actually in the background a lot.
Yeah, they are.
And I also, I know that I probably should be talking about this in the Eros and Psyche episode, but I do what I want. I noticed that the dancers for the ball are almost exclusively the same dancers for pretty much every single ballroom dance scene. There's no debutante
In season 3.
Yeah,
In season 3, it is like that. Yeah.
there is no debutante on the dance floor, including Lord Cho and
Kenworthy.
and Emma Kenworthy. Like, I have looked through so substantially because I saw the only
No,
time
they
that
hired dancers.
yes, and I do understand that obviously, like, it would be really, really a lot of extra time and effort to teach non-dancers those routines as well as the main couple that is dancing. So I do understand it. But the part that I was confused by is no, I will get there when I get there. No, we'll save it for the ball. I will save it for the ball.
But I also think though, knowing what we know from the original the official Bridgerton podcast, is that I think it was that one or an interview. We know that in season 1 it was hard for them to find professional dancers, and that is why you see Colin dancing so much. Like,
yes.
in the first couple of episodes, they have him on the dance floor a lot, and it gave us the opportunity to watch Penn watch him. But he was basically just filler, and that's why, like, the episode, the first time her and the Duke meet up at a ball, and there's like that, they do that fake tiff, like, where he's like frustrated with her. Colin goes out and dances with somebody. Like, I had said, like, since the first episode he didn't dance with anyone, but he danced that one. But I remember that he was either interviewed, or I'm pretty sure it was on the official Bridgerton podcast.
So no, I think
season 1.
I think it was actually one of the on the Tadam Bridgerton website where where it has those kind of set interviews that they put on. I'm pretty sure that's where I saw.
Yeah, because he was only used. He said they only called him in to dance at a ball. There was a ball that they asked him to dance because they didn't have enough dancers, and he had a background in with dance and musical theater. So,
which actually I find a lot of British actors are really triple threat kind of actors, which is why they're just so phenomenal.
Like, season 3 has enough dancers, and they use them well. The dances are well choreographed. They always have been, but like, they were able to play the sidelines more this season. I think they needed to do that because these are the sideline characters, right? So I think that was the focus. They put professional dancers on the floor because you're not supposed to be looking for people on the floor. You're supposed to be watching what's unfolding on the sidelines.
I know, but you know what? This is our job to do, is to look at what's going on in the background. And like, that's what
we never get to see Cho and Kenworthy even interact until the church.
We do, but I will talk about that in the Eros and Psyche, so because I've got it in those notes.
And the Queen's Ball.
Yeah.
They're like next.
No, but I've got notes.
It was like, like Lord Fuller's thing. She's there, but he's not.
No, they're actually both there about it.
Every time I see her, she's with the other women. I don't see her with him.
They're actually around the same table, but they're facing away from each other.
I must have just missed. I'm gonna have to go back and.
So with Lord Samadani, I think.
Because remember, I didn't get a chance because I work so much. I didn't get a chance to rewatch Fuller.
Yes.
Looking at side stories. I went off of. I just bounced off of you.
Yeah. That's okay. I was up till 2 a.m. You know what? Like, it may. Like, I started the episode at 22 minutes. It took me from, I'm gonna say, 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. to write from 22 minutes to 54 minutes. So 32 minutes worth of screen time took me 4 hours of note. Like,
well, get your stuff up on Patreon for our one Patreon, Julia.
I do. It's all it's all as we record each episode, I then post it over there. But
Have
she
you
hasn't.
added mine? I screen and
You
I
have
think I put them in.
you have access to adding everything in.
Okay, I gotta
It's
figure out.
a like if
You
you
gotta
look
show
on.
me how to sign in so I can
Yeah.
upload.
No. It's in Google Drive and you're added into it and you've got full access rights. And it's just called Bridgerton Patreon Notes. And then every week after we record, I just copy and paste those notes into that folder.
Oh,
So you just add
I
them
don't know
into the
if my
whole
stuff
folder.
will screenshot type copy.
Yeah, because it's in Google Drive, not Google Doc, so you're fine.
Okay.
So going back to Lord Samadani, let's pull up my notes again. So I think Francesca pretty much knew from the get-go that I think she kind of was tolerating his interests up until she met Lord Kilmartin, and then the second that she met him and realized what it was to have feelings. And this is the thing that I hold issue with how they are kind of playing, how they played out that last scene with Michaela, is they are now acting as if that kiss during the wedding and then the meeting of Michaela is like her awakening. Oh, this isn't what I expected it to be, and the awakening. When if you watch episode 4 specifically, you watch her meeting him, what we're about to talk about, the stroll through town, and then the subsequent bumping into him at the Queen's Eros and Saki ball ballet situation. You can tell that she is deep, like this isn't just placid interest that she shows towards Lord Samadani. This is
I have
pity.
thought though.
This is I can't stop thinking about him. You can tell she's a very, very cerebral thinker and she internalizes so much, but it also shows on her face quite distinctly whatever she feels. Like she doesn't have a good poker face. And so I think from the get-go, she was truly in love with Lord. I mean, well, not I don't know.
Well,
I'm
do you
not.
know how they say true love is not how someone makes you feel? There's two kinds of love. There's loving someone for how they make you feel, and then there's loving someone and that's how it's based on how you want to make them feel. You want to make them feel seen. So I think that Lord Kilmartin she likes how he makes her she
Yes.
feels seen. He understands her. He wants to impress her. It's that first person that showed her 100% laser focused attention because she came from a huge family and she felt like she faded into the woodwork. And then she just started isolating herself, and nobody noticed she isolated herself or thought anything of it until her mother starts marrying off daughters and realizes, I don't even know my daughter. You know what I mean? And then Violet figures it out. Nobody else has figured it out. Nobody else even tries to understand her at all. When she's sitting there in complete silence with Kilmartin, they are all flabbergasted. Why would she do that?
Well,
but he gets her, and that's the first time she felt like
seen.
And it's I think both of them are neurospicy, and now I think there's a lot of neurospicies in the Bridgerton family. They're coded that way. But I think like she met her person. I think they are very much similar and they vibe with each other. And it's the first time for both of them that they found that person that just gets them, right? But I think that I'm not saying her feelings were any less real. I think they were real, but I think they were based on how he made her feel. And when they did kiss, I think she was expecting sparks. She was expecting everything her mother had said. She thought it would come with the physical intimacy, only it didn't. And in true Francesca fashion, if you listen to the way she talks, she thinks she's the problem in the room. Like she isolates because she thinks she's the one who can't get along with everyone else. She's the one who can't connect to other people. She needs silence. She needs whatever. She feels like when you hear her talk about Samadani, he may not want to dance with me a second time. He may not even show up. Like she believes she's the problem. So she probably in that moment, she thinks she's the problem. Like this kiss had nothing to it. I probably screwed it up. I almost think that's what her face was. Not disappointment that there were no sparks, but what in the world did she do wrong? kind of thing.
I think
And
she's also putting a lot of pressure on a singular moment in which her whole
yeah,
family are watching them.
watching, yeah.
And she is, her and John are two of the most private, introverted people doing something that is very intimate and something that was not really done back then. And she's also surrounded by a family who are not just extroverted, but they are very extroverted with their feelings, which are two different things. You can be extroverted in your personality, but you can be introverted in the way that you process your feelings, like my husband, or you can be like me, where I'm just pure extrovert. A lot of her family are very, very extroverted, and she is doing something so deeply personal in front of them all, which is probably her own personal hell. Like, even standing up there, saying those vows in front of other people is her own personal hell.
Yes, and I think that while he's not as introverted as she is, and I think he probably I think he saw her hesitation and
Mm.
he made it a small chaste kiss because he thought that's what she would want, right?
Yes.
So I'm hoping we see something different in season 4 where they have communicated better in the intimacy department, because I mean, we know he's not the quote unquote love of her life because he's not the Bridgerton lead for her.
Mm.
But I still hope to
Deep
see the romance that
grumbles.
did exist in the book for them, because you can't have a second act, a second chance at love if the first one wasn't love.
Well, is that to
The
say
first
that
one has to be love for the second one to be a second chance.
is that to say then that Violet is not going to love Lord Anderson back with equal fervor because she's already been tainted by having loved someone more? Or is it just that we realize that loves can be different? And I think it's more on that side. It's she had two great loves, but they were just complete opposites of each other.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they need to play out the Lord Kilmartin romance as a love story, that there has to be love there for her trope to be second chance at love, because the whole definition of second chance at love is that you love somebody, you lose them, they pass away, something, whatever happens with the relationship, that it ends and you think you're never going to find a love like that again, and then you do.
Well,
That's what second chance at love is.
Where I hold issue with what Jess Brunel is trying to shove forward is she is saying, I saw Francesca in myself, or vice versa, or whatever.
Right.
And she is now trying to state that Francesca is a lesbian. If Francesca was in a loving relationship with her husband, whom they were intimate by her choice, and
that would not play into that.
In the books, she was still, it's not like her and John didn't have a good sex life. It was just vanilla. Whereas with Michael,
and it was all she knew. So at the time it was good.
Yes.
She enjoyed herself. She loved him, but she didn't know that there was
more.
Yeah, that there could be more. Like, no,
which
is there more?
Really funny because I was just watching season 1, the first sex scene between Daphne and Simon, and they actually used that line in there as well. You know, he's like,
is there more? Yeah.
Yeah, like, did you touch yourself? There is more. And she's more. Yeah, so they've actually used that line more than once.
Regency women.
I know. But I also think that, and this is getting very personal, but that's fine. I also think that good sex actually comes from communicating your needs, something that I cannot fathom. I cannot fathom Francesca ever doing. And I think the difference is I cannot imagine John in brothels. John is not someone who has gone and gotten an education. So his entire education is with Francesca, and that comes with a lot of insecurity and fumbling and finding out your partner's likes and dislikes. And it's not ever going to be that ferocious Anthony and Sienna kind of passion.
No, and they don't have
the personalities for the Anthony and Sienna kind of passion.
Yeah. And they don't have the plethora of education that we do now, that they could seek it out without seeking it out a brothel. Like, the reason Colin went to a brothel, folks, is an education. I 100% believe that.
Whereas Michael was
worldly,
well educated. That man had
worldly. He traveled.
That man had a PhD in education. Like, it was
education.
Yeah, well, I was being subtle. I'm never
Well, he
subtle.
was a traveler and he was in India for a long time, and
Kama Sutra.
we know where the Kama Sutra comes from. That's all
We
I'm
have
saying.
we have strayed so far from the point at this point. But I kind of
But
like
no, we had to talk about this scene a little bit spicy because it does mirror a spicy scene. We
yes.
just had to give John and Francesca something.
Like I kind of I wanted to defend the love that John and Francesca have because I think that Jess
Yes.
Brownell is already trying to shit on it, and I'm like, if you're gonna shit on it, please let it be on a bed
Tell
of
us how
roses.
you really
And
feel, Tash.
like, if you're gonna shit on it, at least let it be manure for their rose garden, okay? Like, like
There
you
are a lot of women, I know women, who did not realize that they were lesbian until their first husband died or they got divorced. So they loved their husband. They just didn't realize
it's
there
different.
could be more
Okay,
until later. They could have played it like that.
yeah,
But Jess Brownell identified with Francesca. So she's trying to make it be like she knew something was different about her at a young age. And
mm,
that doesn't play into loving a man at all.
yeah. I get my hackles up when she like John is just the biggest sweetie in the world, and I just don't want his little feelings being trampled on because I tell you what, you trample on
Yeah.
my John, I trample on you. You hear it, Jess?
How could they right a wrong? And I'm not saying Julia Quinn did it wrong. I'm just saying like she gave us some of the story but not all of the story, and Bridgerton is choosing to give us more of the story but just to right like
Hmm.
I mean like yeah we get to see more of Francesca's romance with John, only it wasn't really a romance. Like it got romanticized in the book and that's not cool.
Well, I mean, because even in the book, like Francesca was entirely missing. And we basically do not get to know her at all, not even a pinch of a pinch until we get up to her book. So she's the first
Right.
one that it's like almost like a brand new character, a brand new setting. Like it feels like almost separate from the other siblings, which is kind of, a little bit what they've done anyway.
That's
But
how it is, like for real.
yeah, she's there, but she's not there. All right, let's get
Right.
back. So, yeah, so Francesca is deflecting from her mother, who's obviously gushing about how to be proper with Lord Samudani and how to hold his interest, and Francesca is basically saying, "Oh, you may not even want to," and like she's basically trying to say, "Mum, I'm not interested," without saying the words, "Mum, I'm not interested," probably hoping one day that her mother actually might catch a clue, and she does not.
It's not gonna
Um,
happen.
Violet insists that
But do
he
you know what I
will.
noticed here?
What's that?
Did you see their outfits?
I don't think I've noticed on the outfits.
Francesca is wearing Bridgerton blue,
Hmm.
and Violet is wearing a lavender color,
Yes.
but they're very similar. It almost gives me the Portia Prudence vibes from season 2
Hmm.
because Francesca's got her little jacket and her little flower, and she's got the bow in
Yes.
her
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah.
And Violet has little flowers in her hair, almost like the little balls that Penelope had in her hair at the
Yes.
balloon
Yeah.
scene, but little
Yeah.
flowers. And she's got the little jacket with a belt under the chest with a little bow. Like it's very,
Well, I mean,
very debutante-esque.
they have
She's looking,
they have changed her from being matronly to being a debutante again in her clothing
yeah,
choices.
and I think this is how she starts her lover era because she's realizing, well, she isn't realizing, but she's kind of living
Subconsciously.
vicariously through, yeah, she's living vicariously through Francesca because she's excited about seeing what's out there again, right? And I think that that's why she's being so pushy. And almost this outfit of Francesca's almost looks more matronly than hers does.
Yes. So actually, yeah, some of Violet's looks this season are some of my favorite of the entire season. But Violet
Yeah,
insists that
very, very young.
yeah, Violet insists that Lord Summerhoney will ask her to dance again, but Francesca is looking away. This is the first time that Violet realizes that Fran may not actually be interested in him. Fran deflects again by stating she sees Lord Carmarthen, then asks her mother about his family. Like Violet is very detached as she says that they really keep to themselves. Very surprised, she questions if Francesca is interested in him.
As Francesca is
Like
like, bye, Felicia.
you can tell because like Violet obviously has like a very well-rounded knowledge of the Ton and everyone in it. So, and I mean, there's not very many people that Violet doesn't, she doesn't look down upon, but isn't super fond of, if that makes any sense at all. Like the way that Violet talks of the Kilmartin family, sorry, well, still, you know what I mean.
You got to understand too, like people who aren't very extroverted in Regency times oftentimes were considered
Outcasts.
pompous,
Yeah.
like snobbish. I mean, look at Darcy in Pride and Prejudice. Like everybody considered him to be a snob because he struggled with social anxiety.
Yeah. He struggled with the
I've been seeing a TikTok person going through 1995 Pride and Prejudice, like he's really got the tism, and like doing a whole case study on how Mr. Darcy has autism.
Tell me why though. The I love you, man. I love you. Like tell
yeah. That's from 2005. Like I love you. Like he's just gotta yeah.
Like
and he's just tripping over it.
It reminds me of Simon when he is anxious and can't get his words out properly. It was exactly that, but because he was saying words that were like
because he'd already and as somebody who's already put their heart out there and felt like it got stomped on, and you're trying to put your heart out there again, like the communication is a lot harder the second time around because you know what could happen. So yes, I 100% understand that. And I felt it because the first time, the first time when it's in the rain and he finds her at that mausoleum thing or whatever, and he's telling her, and it doesn't go the way he thought it would. And like, she crushed him, like rushed him. And so when he's asking again and he's telling her again, and his words are all choppy, he's stuttering.
I love it though so much. Like,
I know.
Somehow the stuttering is like 1,000 times better and more effective to my little heart than I love you. Like, I love you. I love you. Love you. I love you. It's so cute. I'm gonna cry. Stop it.
It's like you can tell he's like, I can't get it. I love you. Like he's trying to get it out. It's like, but yeah, like, and we know that the Ton, the elite, the gentry.
Well, he's a box. He's a square box trying to get a big circle feeling, and it's not fitting. And he's like, I don't understand. How do I get this out?
Yeah, and people, if you think about the way Mrs. Bennet, put Mrs. Bennet and Violet kind of in the same place, they're having the same sentiment. Samadani's very extroverted, very easy around people, easy to talk to people. Violet's loving on him because she thinks that will help Francesca become more extroverted, because in the Ton, extroversion is seen as friendliness, is seen as like, oh, they're amiable.
People will want to do business with you. People will want to converse with you. You will get invited to the event.
When you're introverted, nobody gets to know you. They decide that's your fault.
Yes.
And people get, they get written off as, and I think that's part of Penelope's issue with the Ton, is she's so quiet and she's on the sidelines, and people have decided she's a wallflower by choice because she's, there's something wrong with her. She's almost snobby, and, nobody knows the real Penelope. Nobody's tried to get to know the real Penelope. And they've just decided in her third season that she is, because, I mean, who have they ever seen her on the dance floor with except Colin Bridgerton? And I think, personally, I think it's funny that they're asking her, like, we heard what you're doing and how funny that you're trying to do this with a lost cause, yet not one person goes, but wait a minute, dude, you've danced with her every season since she's been out. Like, are you sure this is what you're doing? Are you sure? Like, nobody does that.
Yeah. So I love that before Francesca even has a chance to answer her mother's question about whether or not she is interested in him, she basically makes a beeline, and Francesca is literally blocking his path in greeting him. Even she seems a little bit shocked at how bold a move that kind of was. Not that he was upset by it, but like, oh, that's rather forward. Oh, hello. Like I don't.
Well, and
I think he is so shy that he is probably used to debutantes being very demure with him. And Francesca,
Mhm.
even though she
She
is in
approached him. He's approached her up to this point, but she approached him.
yes, and I think that people are really people, just for now. Like she sought him out. She chased after
Yeah.
him. She got what she wanted. Ah!
Well, and here's the thing, because, like, it's in the notes, so I'm bringing it up here for a reason. We know from what's in the window that this is a mirror to the future outside the Modiste tete-a-tete between Colin and Penelope, right? So
Yes.
here's what I'm going to point out to you. Lord Kilmartin is there and gets spotted by her, and he's walking and she blocks his path. Okay.
Yes.
Colin turns the corner, spots Penn, and if you watch how he walks, like, people want to say he's drunk, but he walks completely fine up that other street until turning the corner. As
Hmm.
soon as he sees her and she tries to move to the left so he can walk, they can pass each other, like she thinks he's going to pass her, he veers to in front of her and blocks
Hmm.
her path. Like, it's like this subconscious thing with these Bridgertons that, like,
You are
no,
you
no,
are my
I
person.
spotted you.
You are my person. You
Yeah,
will acknowledge me.
like they are the bees and their person is the flower. Like, I'm blocking your path. You can't get past me. You will talk to me. Period. Point blank.
So it was actually super funny that you mentioned about the bees and the flowers. So whilst on holidays, I don't know what is going on in New Zealand at the moment. There are bumblebees everywhere. And they are flocking to me. My girlfriend that I was traveling with was like, "What is going on?" Like every single day, I had a bumblebee like in my path, on my body, like buzzing around me. And the joke kind of was, even before that had happened, was my girlfriend, even though she is part Italian, she has probably about your skin tone as well, like fair, but can get like a slight licking of color to it, but slight. Whereas for me, even though the computer screen washes me out, I am quite olive skinned and definitely
Yeah.
seek out the sunlight. So every single place that I went, New Zealand sun is incredibly dangerous and very, very hot, like a lot hotter than people ever expected to be. We have the highest rates of melanoma in the world for a very good reason. Our sun is pretty scorching. But every single place that we went, we would find a spot that she could sit in the shade and I could sit in the sun. And I would say, I'm just a sunflower searching for her sunlight.
Okay, so if bumblebees are drawn to you, it could be a sign of pleasant energy, or
Hmm.
even a connection to nature and abundant. They might be attracted to your energy specific sense. And it says that spiritually, it is believed that bees are drawn to people with positive energy and high vibration.
That's a bit cute. I also rescued a few, like
And
when we
they're
were,
symbols of prosperity.
and because it was like
They
not even in one specific area. Like we were in Queenstown, I had bumblebees. We were in Tekapo, which is a 3 hour drive away. Bumblebees. We went to Mount Oraki. Bumblebees. There was a bumblebee on the path and it was looking a bit tired. So I went and got a stick and moved him off the path into some nice little bumblebee bee spots for him. And then when we went to Hamner Springs, which is like an 8 hour drive from Queenstown, like literally halfway up the side of the country. And there was a little bumblebee that got a little bit too close to the hot springs, so I went and rescued him and gave him a nice spot to kind of lay. And then I don't know whether it was the same bumblebee, but then like half an hour later, when I got out of that pool and went next door to the cafe, like a bumblebee came and like sat on my shoulder, and I'm like, "Hey, little buddy, you coming to say thank you for getting me out of the pool?" Like they were literally everywhere. And the joke had been the whole holiday is that I was the sunflower because I searched for the sun and the bumblebees love me.
Well, and a bumblebee being attracted to you is also a sign that you are attracting positive things into your life and attracting abundance. So there you go.
Could I have avocados in abundance? They cost a lot of money. All right, so getting back to it. So what Francesca did here was actually, yeah, very, very brazen. And Violet is looking very detached. Sorry,
Violet is looking very embarrassed
sorry.
because her daughter's
I,
breaking
I
every
I
social
skipped.
etiquette in the
I
book.
skipped line. Yeah, so yeah, Lord Carmarthen greets them both, but Violet looks extremely displeased. She's fidgeting and she's looking everywhere, extremely
Make sure
uncomfortable.
nobody's watching.
Yeah, because her daughter just broke like all of the rules. She's just approached a man very brazenly, and Violet, I don't know why, but Violet just had a problem with Lord Kilmartin from day dot. I mean, I know the way that he came to the house, but it also just seems sort of out of character for Violet to not even give someone a chance. You know,
Well, and
she's,
here's the thing, and I think this is pointed out by Benedict later when he says our mother likes epic romance, but you got
yes,
to think about what epic romances are at the time. The woman cannot pursue, right? The woman cannot go after what she wants. She has to attract. The man has to come to her, and he has to do the big bold thing. And
yes,
he does a big bold thing, but because she's so focused on Samadani, she doesn't see that. But then she sees her daughter do it. And
yes,
it's uncomfortable for her because this is her daughter. This is her quiet daughter. This is her good daughter. This is her easy daughter. You know, all of those tropes of that one quiet child, the one who causes no complications. And now her daughter is one huge, I mean, she's just as chaotic as Colin is in this
uh,
moment
yeah.
from a female perspective.
Well, don't
And
go.
Violet doesn't know what to do with that.
Yes, because like on that note, like Violet was already looking displeased before Francesca basically accuses, or like she confronts Lord Kilmartin for leaving so abruptly the other morning. Like, and he tries to explain very
Mm-hmm.
politely, like she had another caller. And like without saying it without saying
Which
it
is the
was
social etiquette when a new caller comes in, the first one, yeah.
not to mention when that new caller is of higher rank, because it kind of reminds me of the Japanese custom where someone will ask your name and how old you are, pretty much with like straight after meeting you, because you need to address someone correctly. So, because you are older in Japanese custom, I would not be able to refer you as Patty or Patty-san. I would have to refer to you as Ms. Coleman or like the Japanese equivalent. But like,
Yeah,
but
I don't need
you
to go to Japan. The second
no,
somebody calls me ma'am or anything, I'll be mad
like,
as hell.
but you are it is seen as a sign of disrespect to refer to someone. I mean, you can once you're like quite close, like it's actually very, very similar to the kind of etiquette of here. And basically, you see the two men, oh, I do not know you. I am Lord. And they both
Yeah.
state what their titles are so they know how to physically proceed given what their titles are.
Because the man
They
with the higher rank controls the narrative.
Yes. So they basically, without saying, hey, my dick's bigger than yours, that is essentially what they just
My
did.
title's bigger than yours.
My
Yeah.
title. My title's bigger than yours. I mean, and it's funny because like one's land can be bigger, but the title is what matters. Any metaphors in that
Well, and
one.
that's again, that's why we say at the what ball is that again? At the
it's not how
where
big your land,
Colin's trying to tell Penn.
but isn't this fitting? It's not how big your land is, it's what you sow on the land, what you
Yeah, it's what
plow.
you sow.
I'm
But
too
like
much.
that's what I'm saying about like Debling being a jerk is he used his title. He knew what walking
Yes.
up to them in the middle of a conversation was going to do. And this, you know, we saw that in the Bridgerton drawing room between Samadani and Lord Kilmartin.
Yep.
And now we're seeing it again because Francesca pretty much knows the etiquette, like she's learned, and she doesn't care. Like she
Yes.
wants to spend time with Lord Kilmartin, and she's like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And he's like, basically, etiquette.
Yes.
Etiquette says. And she's like, so?
Screw etiquette. Because just as every other Bridgerton out there, etiquette only extends as far as feelings go. When feelings are involved,
Once
we do what
feelings
we want.
start, yeah, once feelings start, etiquette
But
goes out the window.
Lord Kilmartin must follow rules, which is funny
Yeah, he's a
because
rule follower.
I am a rule follower. I went to the swimming pool with my son on Saturday, and many rules were not being followed. And I find it really, really, really difficult because I never want to come off as a Karen, but I also New Zealand's number one cause of death in children is drowning. And I get really, really, really overwhelmed by seeing children who legally need to be within arm's reach of parents not even in the same room as their children in the water. And they are relying on someone else to save their children. And I'm like, I'm watching my own kid here, like, I get overwhelmed. I am a rule follower. I need rules and order and things to be in place the way that they are supposed to be in place. And I understand John.
Smaug and I could not get to a venue. I ended up asking questions because there was a exit door that just didn't look like it was an exit for passengers. And we were like, how do we get out of here to get to this other spot on the ship? Like we were trying to figure that out. And I finally asked, and they pointed us down to this door that we walked to twice. And it did not look like a door we could go out of. So both of us being really big rule followers was like, we can't use that door. And then they're like, you just go out that door. We're like, oh.
Need to put a sign on the door. You may exit here.
Right. It's like it said emergency exit, right? When it says emergency exit,
I would freak out.
Can't go.
I would freak out that alarms are going to start blaring at me.
Exactly. Yes. We were like, we can't go out the door. We're going to be that guy. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to be that passenger that the alarms go off and everybody comes running. And why did you go out that door?
Yes.
That's why we weren't using it.
But Francesca deflects his logic yet again by saying she had hoped to see him at Lord Fuller's book collection. John then explains that he does not often attend society functions. Interesting that this conversation is taking place right in front of the china shop, which has Wedgwood blue on display, which is what the Bridgerton colors were originally designed after, because Wedgwood china was the epitome of elegance. Unlike Wedgwood china, though, Francesca and John will not stand the test of time because just like China, it will shatter fast when he dies.
But Colin and Penn are having their conversation in front of that same china. That's how we mirrored, like, oh, this is the exact same meeting on the street, just different characters. So you can see one's in the daylight, one's very chaste. It's still, I think Francesca comes off as passionate. I think it's very, her feelings are very much on display.
Yes.
It proves here Francesca does have feelings, like where she's just very uncomfortable with her feelings, where Colin is very comfortable with his feelings.
Yeah. I think,
and they're both confronting the other person. Colin confronts Penn.
Yes. Francesca is a little bit more like, I have these feelings, but I'm going to shove them down because it's not what I want. Because what she but John explains that he does not often attend society events unless he is socially or morally obligated to. Francesca very awkwardly asks, are you just stopping to speak with us to be polite? At this moment, John, who is an incredibly literal thinker, says, I believe you stopped me, crushing and embarrassing Francesca. A very long and awkward
the look on her face. All I could think about there was Bridget Jones when she gets busted and she says she's talking on the phone with somebody who's dead.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of the screen, it's like FUCK. And it's like, that's that moment for her. Like, oh, I blew it.
Yeah.
I'm dumb.
A very long and awkward pause ensues, and John tries his best to rectify the moment by bringing up the melody. He's like, you can see him like tick, 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 brain not computing. Okay.
Like, what can I come up with?
You need to say something now. What is something that I can say? And
you can tell him making her uncomfortable made him so uncomfortable.
He
and did not like upsetting her at all.
For someone who comes off as very TISM coded, he is actually incredibly good at reading Francesca specifically. Like if you actually like really
and it gives me that same vibe without words. It gives me that same vibe of where Colin says, it pains me to see you upset, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's the same thing. He sees that Francesca's upset and he must fix it.
Yes.
And he's racking his brain like, how can I fix this?
And he knows that Francesca is very musically inclined. So he thinks, okay, I'll bring up music That's something that we can bond over. And so he brings up the melody being played in the background by a violinist by stating, enjoyable music. Yes? Like, please take the bait. Please just let us
Please,
get back
please,
to,
please. Yeah.
please make this less awkward because you have already like just thrown us into a dumpster fire of awkward woman. Fran is rather ticked off now and is not using her debutante lesson and quips back, if I'm being honest, no, the pace is too fickle. Just as you think you are starting to comprehend the melody, the song is over. Fran has really developed her mother's penchant for speaking in double meaning. Although she is speaking directly of the music, it seems she is also calling out Lord Carmarthen for giving her hot and cold signals. She took his response as a rejection when in reality, he was just answering literally. Oh, to watch the neurospicy battle of the brains is hilarious. Because that's what's happening right now.
And neurospicy flirting, because it's the same thing too. Neurospicy flirting, like half the time you don't realize somebody's flirting. Like I don't think Lord Kilmartin is realizing she's flirting, and she's flirting in a very neurospicy way where it's very subtle.
Well,
right? Like in her head, she feels like she's flirting a lot, but it's not coming off as a lot.
Yes.
So he's not catching it. And he very literally is like, I believe you stopped me. But he pauses kind of, he starts a delivery that's faster and he slows down as he realizes what's coming out of my mouth is not a good idea.
Well, and that's exactly what happens when they next meet. And I know that I'm jumping episodes here, but I kind of want to because the two scenes kind of go hand in hand. Because in the next scene that we have of those two together, I mean, we're not finished the scene quite yet. But the next time that she sees him is at the ball, and she immediately tries to throw her connection with Lord Samanani in his face and say, you know, I don't much feel like talking to you. I'm so tired
She's
from
trying to reject him because she felt rejected.
And he says, but is that not our preferred method of communication? He was flirting and then realizes, oh no, I have taken a grave misstep, and she is pissed. And you know what? I actually very much commend him because he knew the exact moment that she was pissed for. Like, I think he just takes a little bit more processing time. He is not Mozilla Firefox. He might, you know, he's a Safari, just a little bit more processing time.
When I say it about Smaug, I'm like, every time I talk about feelings, he turns into Internet Explorer.
I think that is being very kind. I would say he
glitches.
He's Bing on Internet Explorer.
He's what?
Bing, you know, the search engine Bing that try to compete with Google, and it just never ever could. And basically, if you ever accidentally click on anything with Bing, it like tries to spam you with like all the stuff, but no one wants it. But
well, I don't think a bunch of Windows comes up or anything like that. I think he glitches. Like, you know, if you pull up a program in Explorer versus pulling up, even when Chrome came out, you pull up a program in Chrome and it just operates faster. It goes from page to page faster, but when you pull it up in Explorer, it just spins.
Yeah, it just spins. 404, not found. Fran continues. A song like this would be far better if it played in 3/4 or 3/4 so that one could in fact feel the music, because I think she's very much someone who has the ability to feel chord progressions and like
she feels music. Yeah.
And you know what? I very much resonate with this. I'm not a musician in any sort of way, but when I went to the Bridgerton by candlelight, you close your eyes and it's like you can almost feel it in like waves washing over you, especially if it's a more relaxing song rather than like there's some songs that are very
if you close your eyes and focus on a lot of songs, if they're played at the right vibration, like there's different hertz levels that affect your body differently. And you have to really focus on your body. If you meditate, close your eyes and focus on your body when certain music is playing, you can feel where you feel it in your body.
Yes.
But what I think is important here is her speech is very coded as well, and that's what gives him the idea, because she says this, if I'm going to be honest with you, because she feels like she already ruined everything, so she says she's just putting her true self out there.
Put it all out there.
This is her authentic self, and it's all about music. But what she says is, this would be better if it was played in 3/4 time. It would be far sweeter. You could feel the music. And he's like, oh, this is why we're not getting through to each other.
We're
Because we've been
playing in the wrong melody.
We've been communicating via silence, just sitting next to each other, and we've been communicating in words. That's why this isn't working. I need to talk to her in music, gestures. Yes. And that's why later he says, I'm not a word guy. That's his wrong chord progression, wrong chords, wrong speed of the music. Yeah. I'm not a word guy. I'm a gesture guy. And here you go. And that's the communication that works with her. She now realizes he is interested in her because he spoke her language finally. They figured out the communication that needed to occur.
Yeah. And I think in this moment, you can really feel Francesca's passion for music in that statement and the way that she delivered it. She then realizes that the way that she did was actually rather rude and seeks out John's facial expressions to see how he was responding. I love how thoughtful he looks before he says, that is helpful, before saying, if you'll excuse me, and then he rushes off. I think Francesca is only
like,
she can only read, like she's not good at reading anything that is to do with herself. Like in some ways she can be rather astute, but in other ways, like Penelope, she is rather dense. And even though he said that is helpful, if you'll excuse me, one could deduce kind of what he was going to do if she paid attention at all. Maybe he's going to go do something, but instead she just takes it as pure rejection.
I think she's very autistic coded in the fact that she needs direct communication, and the wording communication is not working because of societal expectations that you aren't allowed to be direct. So direct communication, direct words, direct whatever is not working for him. So he goes and he does this gesture of giving her exactly what she said she wanted. And again, that's why I think this romance works for her. I think the reason she developed feelings is because he saw her in a way nobody has yet. I mean, if you think about, if you grow up in a family that you feel, I mean, again, using my own experience, the reason that we connected the way we did is because I felt like an alien in my home, hence loving sci-fi and really being into aliens and extraterrestrials and droids, AI and things like that. Like there's got to be something about me for why I don't fit into my family. And then I meet someone who I completely vibe with. The first person that ever saw me, and I never masked, not from day one. I was instantly, hey, I just got this. I learned this thing in this magazine. Like, Jess was completely my nerdy self from the beginning, and he was completely his nerdy self from the beginning. And we vibed for that reason. And I think that's a very heady thing for her.
Can I read you a little quote that fits into both scenarios?
Sure.
We are all a little weird, and life's a little weird. And when we find someone whose weirdness is compatible with our own, we join up with them and fall in mutual weirdness and call it love. Dr. Seuss.
Love. Dr. Seuss. It's one of my favorite quotes ever. And I always say, like, I tell people, I'm like, you're weird, but you're my kind of weird.
You're my kind of weird.
Like,
yes.
I like weird people. I like, if you have a good weird vibe, we'll get along.
One of the most heartbreaking lines in Taylor Swift's newest album is, she said, you said normal girls were boring, but you were gone by the morning. Like, you told me I was special, that I was different, but you still left.
Yeah.
But Francesca, she looks utterly embarrassed when turning to her. Oh, one moment. This is just preschool. Hello, Natasha Metzer speaking.
He's like, Mummy, you forgot the sauce.
Yeah, I'm being told off. Francesca looks utterly embarrassed when turning to her mother and says, like a schoolgirl, to answer your question, no, I'm not interested in him.
That's exactly what it was. Like, she thinks that whole thing went so wrong. So she's like, no, even though I flew across the street to block his path, I don't like him at all.
Yeah. I love that even after the whole interaction, the first thing she says to her mum is the question that her mum asked her prior to any of this interaction going on, but it was clearly on her mind the entire time. Violet feels a bit confused or flustered for her daughter and just kind of follows after her like, what? I don't know what to do to make it better.
And it's like that whole interaction with Lord Kilmartin is just parentheses. Like, it's one of our tangents. Like, their conversation just tangents off. I'm going to have this talk with him. And then she finally answers the question.
I mean, I do it all the time. Like, we'll be chatting away And then I'll remember that
Mhm.
I started a tangent like 10 minutes ago and I never actually got to the point. And then I'm like, oh, that's right. There was a point to it. I need to go back to there before I can finish anything else of what I was saying.
Right.
Honestly.
Very, but it just shows you how, like, honestly, how a neurodivergent brain works. Like, she's still having the conversation with her mother the
Yes.
entire time she tangents off and has a conversation with Lord Kilmartin.
And
She
honestly,
just continues it. I mean,
I,
it does change. Her
yes.
answer probably changed with that interaction,
Depending on
but
how the interaction went. I
yeah.
very much relate to it because I think you and I's brains work in quite similar ways as well with the tangents and the yeah. Let's look at another possible courting situation in this episode. I have been meaning to, and from here on out, I do actually start putting in timestamps. I didn't for this one. Let me shimmer myself into the thing and I'll pull up a timestamp for you guys. Because I think from now on, because we are going through quite a few scenes. It is like a mausoleum. We're okay. So yeah, so I've been trying to write in timestamps. I didn't because I wrote these notes originally like 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago. So I hadn't put them in, but from now on, because obviously we are getting into episodes where it's pretty 50-50 of pollen content and then side stories content. So the timeline will jump. Like for these two scenes do happen back to back. So it's not so bad. But in other scenes, I
Right.
do know where it kind of jumps, where we've skipped
Jumps to a
basically
pollen scene
all the
and goes,
pollen. Yeah, all
yeah.
the pollen. So I will try to put in timestamps for you to jump to so you know exactly the scene that we are talking about. So this scene takes place
Or
at
you hit
the
pause on the podcast, watch the pollen scene, and then turn it back on.
yes. So this scene takes place at the Cowper Mausoleum. And it takes place about 17 minutes, 45 seconds. So Araminta and Cressida are sitting in silence during calling hour while the clock goes tick, 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 tick. Very interesting, though. Patty and I both noticed that calling hour is taking place at 1 p.m., which is very unusual because from my memory, calling hour was in the morning.
Yeah, calling hour. Well, calling hours, like it
Not
usually
morning, but I thought it was like maybe
like
like
10
10 or
a.m.
11. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Because
10 a.m. to noon usually, because then you have the midday meal and people leave.
well, and because the parties that went on to 2, 3 in the morning, you weren't getting up at
Right.
9 a.m.
You were not getting up. Yeah. And most of the time the family would be just done eating. So
Yes.
everybody, nobody's hangry during calling hour. Everybody's as sweet as they can be because
Well,
they've
and
had
it's
their
also so that
coffee.
you're like your maids have like freshly tended to you. You're like freshly dressed, probably fresher smelling, all the things.
Yeah. And we know like Eloise, like when Penelope came out of her room for the first time in a week, when Eloise showed up, she was late to breakfast. So, and they weren't preparing for calling hours because honestly, Portia felt like nobody's calling on Penelope, right? Like she's done with all that business. So Eloise came at calling hours for Penelope as well,
Yes.
but they weren't prepared because they weren't expecting it. But you can tell that Cressida and her mother sit through calling hours every day. Like this is just the vibe of same shit, different day to me.
Yes.
You know, with
Whereas
the clock
we've
ticking and
got the
yeah,
stark difference where when you look upon the Bridgerton household during calling hour, it is usually Hyacinth and Gregory playing chess together. It is Eloise sitting in the corner with a book in hand. It's, Violet is doing her cross stitch. Um,
and what else do we know about
Colin's
calling
usually
hours?
eating.
Yeah, but Violet asked Colin to be present
Yes.
because they needed an adult male to be present in case somebody chose to propose at that time
Yes, and isn't
during
it
calling
interesting
hour.
that there is no Lord Cowper in the room because
Or,
I don't think that he can
yes,
deign to be in the presence of two females for that long. He seems like a super misogynistic type
that
who cannot
yes,
tolerate the presence
that,
of women.
and I think this totally gives us the clue of how successful he thinks his daughter is going to be on the
Well,
marriage mart. Like he's
and
not even bothering to be in the room because he does not think anybody's coming to call on her.
well, look at other households compared to the Cowper household. So the Cowper drawing room is actually the same colors as Featherington, except Featherington are obviously in a they're like almost like a lime green, whereas the Cowper household is in like the deepest, it's a kind of a
Forest
turquoisey.
green. It's like a very,
It's turquoise because it's a bluey green, but a very, very dark bluey green with kind of like
yeah.
a dark gold kind of accent. And then the only things that they really have in the room as feature pieces is a self-portrait of Lord Cowper, which usually
Hmm.
that is usually the place that you have a portrait of either previous generations, a family portrait, or a portrait of you and your wife. But no, it is Lord Cowper
Yeah.
looming over these women as they sit there in silence. And I feel like that kind of really plays into the scene. We also talked about the fact that,
Yeah.
for
And there's a
one,
bunch of wild animals like that. That bear tchotchke, it's a gold, like a solid gold or solid brass bear, like grizzly
yes.
bear. And then the fireplace mantle has the, what did you say it was? Manticore or
It's a
something?
manticore. So their drawing room is probably one of the least decorated out of any drawing room that we see in the Bridgerton world. So they
And they
have
can afford candles, but they can't afford to burn them.
yes. So the manticore, if you look directly like as it kind of zooms in on the clock to show the time, you can see right below it is the Greek key going into a what I believe the image to be is two Spartans or Greek warriors of some variety. I'm just going to go with Spartans fighting off a manticore. And I actually saved this one piece of information. Oh, don't tell me I exited it. I did. Oh, where is it gone? Let me find it.
Hold on, I want to be fully paying it.
So this is the first part, and then I'll give you the funny part. The manticore largely, the manticore is a mythical creature with a man's head, a lion's body, and a scorpion's tail. And it largely represents a symbol of strength, evil, and tyranny. And then manticores are evil, but not particularly clever.
Well, and I find it interesting that on the mantle depiction, there's two soldiers, two Spartan soldiers
Yes.
hunting, and like they have drawn it's not swords, it's like javelins or
Spears. It's spears.
something. Yeah, they're spears. Like they're attempting to kill, like hunt and kill.
Well, and I kind of wonder whether this is going to be in the next season. We haven't gotten any news as to whether Jessica Madsen is going to be returning, but I have feelings about that. I do believe that she will return at the very least for Eloise's season based on what we are about to talk about. But I do wonder whether the two who are trying to kill off the Manticore is Araminta and Cressida specifically. Granted, I know that we are just reading into things that probably don't exist and that's just the house that they're in. But hey, I'm a reader. I'm a read everything.
But I
I'm
find, I mean, well, and honestly, the set choices are made for specific reasons. Like
yes.
we knew from the lady that played Lady Tilly, like the home that was chosen, like for parts of her home, like it wasn't one big house. Like they created a set for part of it, but part of the home was this one specific house because
Yes.
of the way, you know, what was in it, like her foyer and stuff, which was where all of the Greek inspired,
Hmm.
you know, the sphinxes and
Well,
whatnot.
and that's the thing that's quite interesting is that the Sphinx and the Manticore are actually somewhat related.
Right. So I think that they chose this particular, and this may not even be in a house. It could be a set because we don't see an outside of their house, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this could have been a set created, which if it was a set created by the set design team, then it very much everything has a story to it. Like I think it's we've already noted all of the candelabras in the other people's homes and
Yes.
how many they have tell you about their wealth. And here we have this, it fits into our narrative that the Cowpers are wealth, but
Yes.
we believe they had a
Loss
loss
of
of money
income with
with the
Jack.
fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they still have all of their
Because
candles, but they're only going to light them for important company.
correct me if I'm wrong, but Lord Cowper does what Archibald does in one of the last episodes and takes away Cressida's selling money. What do you
Her dowry.
he
He
takes away
reduces her dowry.
yeah, does he reduce it or remove it?
No, she said he was reducing it, that he
Okay.
was going to cut back on her dowry because she was not finding anyone. So
I think that was an
that
excuse
is when
because
Araminta said, you
he,
can pretend to be
yeah,
Whistledown and you can get that money, and that
yes,
$5,000, if you can uncover Whistledown or whatever, $5,000 could get you a country gentleman, which
yes,
tells us that her dowry was more than $5,000
yeah, but
because they were trying to get her a town gentleman, not a country.
yes, but when she said that, it kind of made me feel like the dowry was missing altogether and that they were maybe just kind of keeping secrets from her a little bit. And I
Well,
do very
reducing
much,
it could be reducing it to zero.
yes, because
I
that,
know they were cutting the clothing budget in half.
yes,
The
well,
clothing budget was getting cut in half and the dowry was getting reduced. So he was making money reduction decisions. And we know that
he was treating her
in
like
their whole
stock.
house,
He was treating her like
yes.
stock, and it was like, oh well, this pig is failure to thrive, so I'm just going to cut it off at the head rather than keep feeding it because it's not going to produce what I want it to, so I'm just going to cut it off.
Well, and if you think about Charlotte from
Yes,
Pride
yeah,
and Prejudice, she was 27 and she
yes,
said, I am officially a burden on my
yes, on my
parents.
family, yes,
Women were expected to grow up and attract a man to marry them so that they could no longer be, because women were a financial burden. They were not allowed to work. They were not allowed, like, their whole sole goal was to hopefully bring new wealth into
well,
the family or bring land or get a title. And if they stayed with the family, that's why they were called old maids, because they were considered a burden. A
what I
man could go into the military, a man could be a bachelor, a
yeah,
woman could not remain unmarried.
what I find interesting is that that drawing room they are in is unlike every other like a Bridgerton household, is filled to the brim with books. And yet I do not think that Araminta would allow Cressida to read because she views intelligence the way that Portia does as not a fine attribute in a female. But on the flip side, I think that Lord Cowper resents his daughter for being dumb.
I think Lord Cowper is dumb. I think that Lord Cowper's room, I think that drawing room is where guests come.
The books look untouched.
Yes, the books are, and most of the books are, they're not novels. The only novels I truly see in the room, there is a stack of novels on one of the side tables to the sofa. But the way the room is set up is you walk into the room to the back of a sofa. You do
Yeah.
not, it's not inviting. You do not, it's not set up for guests, and the fireplace you can tell is cold, and it's got the table and the chairs by it like the gaming table.
Yeah.
That fireplace doesn't get lit. That room is not set up for the fireplace to be central. It is cold. The books on the wall are all reference books. They, again, just like Lord Fuller, they're there for decoration. They are not to be touched. There is no dust in the room. They have that incredibly elaborate chandelier with all the little, there's a specific name for them, like the little pendants. You know, there's a million little pendants.
You mean
And
the crystals?
yeah, the little crystal
Yeah.
pendants from, because it's like a pendant chandelier or whatever. Those are hard to restore. I've watched a thing where there was one in a
I've
house.
tried to do it with my granddad's. It's really hard.
Yeah, but the whole room is completely symmetrical, like perfectly symmetrical, but it is not set up in an inviting way at all. It is like no one can come in. This room cannot be touched.
Pendalogs,
And possibly.
they can also be referred to prism or crystal drops. Pendalogs or pendulum
Pendalog sounds right because I thought pendant. Like
or
it sounds right.
pendulaquettes, pendulocus.
But like everything, and I found it interesting that the curtains are open, but the windows
but
still
no
look
light comes
dark.
through.
And there's a bust. There's a stand with a bust in the one window, like it's blocking the window.
I couldn't tell what the bust was,
to the
though.
window.
Could
No,
not
it's like,
tell.
but it's creepy. It's just a face peeking out from the side of the curtain.
Yeah, could you imagine bumping into that thing at nighttime? No, thank you. Let's look at the difference between Araminta and Cressida during this scene, because in previous times where they have definitely dressed as if they belong together, like mother daughter, this is one of the very first times where I actually notice an extreme stark difference between them. Araminta is in the deepest shade of aubergine, while Cressida is in the lightest shade of pink and is covered in flowers, whereas like Araminta is in like, it almost reminds me of scales, but not of a snake, more like a serpent kind of creature. Like it's very, everything about her is hardened, like alligator, crocodile, like a hardened creature.
I think it's like it's like an it's like an armor type of thing.
Yes.
But I also take it
An
off as
armadillo.
like I think it comes off very China doll, and I think that Lord Cowper treats them like possessions, like you said, like stock. Like his
Yes.
daughter is stock to sell off, but his
Yes.
wife is a possession. Look at
Yes.
him, his collection of books that he's showing off, right? His collection of candles that he refuses to burn. Like I think Araminta was a trophy wife, and
Yeah.
she dresses like a China doll. She's got that alabaster skin, she's blonde, she's statuesque because she's taller.
But
I think
if they were going by Regency era rules, that would be her just outside of her initial mourning period of losing their spouse or significant person in their life. Those colors were exclusively used as mourning.
right, but you also have a person who sees bright colors. Anything bright is bad. Like
Yes.
he is a like dark colors, it has to be dark, it has to be cold. So they probably like at home he makes them dress like that. And it also shows you her deep depression. And the
Yes.
reason like Cressida is in bright pink, I think they play into Cressida's feelings a lot with her clothing in this season. And because like when she's really struggling, when she talks about the scene where she tells her she is engaged, they're getting her engaged to the old guy.
Yeah.
She's wearing pink with black as the
Yes.
contrasting color. So I think that they use pink a lot, and especially the scene where she's in the same Bridgerton blue with Eloise so
Yeah.
a lot. So I think pink is like
Well, they talked about pink. They specifically said for the season that there was a lot of like pink hues to show romance and love. And Cressida is in the lightest shade that she's ever been, and that's because her friendship with Eloise is kind of in bloom, hence why she has these big flowers all over her. It's very young, youthful, in love. Foreshadowing. And she has hope for a better future because this is the first time that she's ever experienced any sort of love in her life, whether that be romantic or just friendship love. She hasn't experienced any sort of love or friendship or kindness from her mother. She has never been taught how to have friends, and she's in fact been taught that friends are just competition. And so I think this is the first time that she's ever had any sort of light in her life, whilst Araminta has sort of lost her hope in humanity and is definitely living in fight or flight mode, which she always chooses fight.
Yes, and I think this plays a like the deep aubergine of mourning. Like I think that Cressida has hope for escaping and getting out of her home, getting out of that life.
Yes.
But Araminta knows that that is that's
that
her
is
lot
her
in
future.
life. That is her bed, and she's made it. Yeah, so she's mourning the life she has.
Yeah.
And Cressida's having hope that she'll escape it.
Well, and it's like Araminta is stuck in the darkness, both metaphorically and physically. Like that house is so dark and dreary, and then along comes an aunt who's like, "Oh, why is it so bright in here? Gross." And funny enough, the only actual
Like
living
her and her brother together are like,
I know. Ew, ew, light. Ugh, it burns my skin. I'm a
like
vampire.
I wonder if they grew up in like a medieval castle that only had stone walls. Like honestly,
Yeah.
I can't wait to see Joanna's house.
What we do in the shadows. Yeah. And I think what is very interesting as well, seeing as we just had a huge conversation in one of our previous episodes about how Lord Dibling gave Penelope the asparagus fern, because the only thing that we actually see that is living in that house and thriving in any sort of way is a fern. It's kind of I can't specify which kind of fern because it's a little bit too blurry. I mean, I hate
so dark.
whoever frickin' films Bridgerton, please, for the love of God, just turn the brightness up. I need to see. I'm so blind. And I'm like,
well, but I think that the Cowper's house is supposed to be dark because it points out to us, A, they're not even opening the curtains for natural light, but they're also not lighting the candles either.
Yet the ferns are thriving in that dark.
But they had a footman, like they had somebody that answered the door and announced Eloise.
Yes.
But this tells me I don't think they have money for maids, because the maids would come in and open the curtain. The maids would come in and prepare the room, and the room is not prepared. So I don't think they have the staff to do the things in their house that need done.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I find a lot of symbolism even just in like the setting and the way that whole scene kind of plays out.
Hmm.
One other big symbolism, and Jess Brandauer has said that timing and clocks are a big symbol of the season. You can hear that clock looming, tick, 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 tick. They are
Hmm.
sitting in silence. And I don't think that's just a way to say that, the time is passing of these two just awkwardly sitting there together. I think it is very much the pressure that they are both under. Araminta, that if she does
Under, yeah.
not do her job and get her daughter married off, that he will see that as a failure on her behalf and punish her for it. And Cressida, on the other hand, is
Yeah.
worried. Tick, tick, tick. Am I going to be married off to an aged fool? And suffer the life that my mother has. Like they are both kind of under the pressure of the marriage mart, and kind of what the marriage mart could
Yeah, and
bring
this is
for
the
her.
only we see clocks in so many different scenes, but this scene and then the engagement party scene are the only ones where we hear the ticking really,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So
And I
I
mean,
do
one of the
think it
episodes is literally called TikTok.
yeah, that's the one with the engagement party.
Getting next, no, 2 episodes. I don't know, number 5, right?
Yeah, it's the fifth episode,
Yeah.
and that's the one that, they've announced their engagement and they have the engagement party at the end, and that's where Cressida announces she's whistle down. But the
Another
whole engagement party, we
another
hear the ticking.
Another question that I have, and what are your thoughts on this? I truly can't tell if Cressida actually cares to be married or if it's literally just to please her mother, as she has shown no signs of having true affections towards any of her suitors. Another reason why many
No.
speculate about her sexuality.
No, I agree. She's going out onto the marriage mart. I think if you look at how Portia navigated the marriage mart with her daughters,
Yes.
she very much was going for security. She tried to push them towards the Duke. She tried to push them towards the Prince. She excitedly was, she was excited that Finch showed interest in Philippa because that's one daughter down
Yeah.
and, getting that daughter off her hands. But honestly, he didn't have a lot of money and her dowry wasn't a lot of money. So she's still supporting them, I believe, in this season, even though they're in a different home
Hmm.
with the fraud money. But I think that Araminta very much raised her daughter the same way. Like she never experienced love. She didn't show her daughter any love. So she's gone on to the marriage mart that you have to get married. You cannot be a burden to us. You have to find someone to marry. And it had nothing to do with love. So, where Penelope read books and wanted romance, the other two sisters wanted marriage. They treated marriage almost like a competition with each other, not like the
Well,
whole ton.
I kind of wonder
And
whether this is why Eloise kind of gravitates towards Cressida a little, because she's like, finally, someone who is
the
not obsessed with
senses.
finding love.
Yeah, Cressida was not obsessed with finding love. She was obsessed with winning
Yes.
a suitor over another woman because
But
she was raised that it's a competition.
I feel like Eloise can respect that and understand that a little bit more than love, to be honest. Speaking of,
Mm-hmm.
so Eloise enters and Cressida is beyond surprised to see her there. Eloise tries to compliment Lady Cowper on her home, but seems almost at a loss for words on how to compliment the complete lack of human emotion displayed in the room. She's like, I know I'm supposed to say something about your house right now, but I don't know what to say to this.
Well, and we've already experienced the Fuller Library.
Yes.
So her word choice in using the word museum is very apropos
Yes.
because there is when you go to a museum, there's not a lot of decor. It's not for a place where you stay. You walk around and you look at the exhibits and they are placed very symmetrically
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
museum. So,
Mhm.
and certain things are highlighted where certain things are not. And I think that's the kindest, nicest word she could come up with, that it was a museum
I
that
love it
fit.
though. So Araminta quips that it is calling hour, and Eloise actually states, and I shall like to call upon Miss Cowper a moment, if that is allowed. I was like, is this foreshadowing? She literally said, I am here to call upon Miss Cowper. May we actually
Yes.
not get Sir Philip Crane's story? Will Eloise's time with Michaela open her eyes to the world, as well as fixing her relationship with Penn open her eyes to how she was treating Cressida? Find out in the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. I don't know. I
No,
just
I think I
they seem like such specific words. I am here to call upon
yes.
her.
But I personally think she was playing on the words of Lady Cowper, like
Yes.
sarcastically quipping them
Yeah.
back to her. Like, yeah, I get it's calling hour, and I'm here to call on Miss Cowper if that's allowed, because any other home she's ever entered, which was only Penelope's, she was
Yes.
allowed. In season one, she had her own mother was like, "Don't you have an engagement with Penelope?"
Yeah.
And she was like, "No," but then she goes. And where do we see her with Penelope? In the drawing room
Well,
when all of the suitors were there. So it was calling hour. And
I
then when she showed up
sort of
after
wonder.
Penelope's shame, with the whole marriage lessons coming out, she showed up at calling hour. Penn was there. The family was at breakfast. They were lingering at breakfast. Penn was late down. She was the last one to the table. And normally, calling hour was after the family had had breakfast and they were prepared for the day. But the Featheringtons don't have to be prepared because Portia has no compunction to even think that Penelope is going to have a suitor call on her.
Yes.
So they think that part of their lives is over.
Yes. I kind of wonder whether Jess Brunel is playing her cards close to home, that kind of like with Benedict in the first season, they are kind of putting in little snippets that
Of the
if they
possibility.
little possibilities that they are going to wait and see. I think that Bessie or Shonda herself have actually probably sat down with Jess Brunel and said, "Hey, you're playing a potentially not dangerous game, but like you don't want to alienate the entire fandom. So how about you just put little snippets in? We will see how the fandom kind of plays out with Benedict and Francesca over the next two seasons, because the next two seasons are going to be very queer heavy. If it plays out in our favor, we will allow you to move forward with also giving Eloise a
Eloise that
potential
treatment.
dalliance, if you will, with Cressida. But if it does not pan out well for them, they'll say, hey, cut it straight back to Sir Philip. We need to stick to the books. We're losing too many of the fans. I think they
Well,
are
yeah,
playing
and I mean
playing it safe.
at the end of season 3 too, when they go to get in the carriage, Eloise and Michaela are holding
Michaela.
hands.
Yes.
And people pointed that out as well,
Yes.
that they're going to play
Well,
that card.
that's why I said the point of like spending time with Michaela may open, because I mean Benedict is a kind of out in the world, as Eloise says, he is out in the world. He has opportunities to experience a lot of things that she kind of does not. Whereas with going out with Michaela, when I say going out with, I mean to
But if
Scotland.
Michaela's going to be Francesca's love interest, that's kind of
No,
new.
no, I don't think it's no. I mean, as in they will form a friendship, and she may.
Oh,
I think
and
that
exposing her to friends that are also
yes, she will just be
maybe I see
exposed to the world, not dip like sort of like season one.
introduced to
So
it, because she has no idea.
season
She
one
has no idea
Benedict,
about Benedict.
season one Benedict, introduced to the
Yeah.
world, not experiencing it directly. But I think it'll open her eyes to it. Sort of like it took Diane a little while for her to be okay with Aunt Jo, not Joanne, is it
Aunt Josephine.
Josephine, thank you. We always mix them up now with Joanne from this and Josephine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Joanne from this and Josephine from Man.
because I think you mixed up the two in a previous episode. I'm like, that's not right. Yeah, so now we're just swapping places and my brain's
I
short-circuiting.
see. It was me.
Was,
I
but it
don't
was
know.
like multiple episodes ago. Um,
Like, we don't mix up names all the time. I mean, hell, I forget Luke and say Colin all the time, or
well, Joe
Benedict
and
Luke.
Josephine, they are both Joes, just with
And they're both
different
spinster aunts.
just with different suffixes, okay? The suffix is just different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that they may play it out a little bit that way. So Eloise plays the doting friend and says she came to check on Cressida as she did not seem herself yesterday. Proof that Eloise does actually pay attention, but that maybe she just needs a lot more time than the neurotypical person to analyze the information she's been given. Maybe she realized that her responses the day previous to the news of being married off to an elderly gentleman was to be found lacking.
That's my thing because I believe Eloise is the ADHD one,
Yeah.
and I believe I'm ADHD, and I will have a social interaction that I will ruminate on for days, and I'll be like, "Oh,
Mm.
I don't know if I should have said that. I don't know like how they receive that." And then I'll come back a few days later, and we've even had conversations like, a few
Hi,
days later or whatever that I'm
me.
like,
I'm
I
the
think
problem. It's me.
like I did this and I'm so sorry. And then turns out you've been overthinking that same scenario and you're like, no, but I did this. It's like, and that's
Honestly,
very much me.
anytime that my brain is short circuiting and you interrupt, and it like we interrupt each other all the time and it's completely normal, but sometimes when we do it to each other and our brains are trying so desperately, we can feel the strand,
To
it's
get that
right
out.
there and we just can't quite grasp it, and then someone talks and you lose the strand and you're like, no. But it's never for a lack of love. It's just for like we can't handle our own crazy right now, let alone throwing in someone else's.
Throw in someone else's, yeah.
Which is
And
basically,
like I think that when Eloise gets home and away from like she doesn't do well in social functions anyway.
yeah.
She's very nervous, very
I
awkward,
think she's trying to
wants to
watch
be with
everything and
safe
she's not
people.
actually paying attention. She hears the
And
words, but
she
she's
goes
not
home and
soaking them
she
in.
processes. Yeah,
Yeah.
she goes home and she processes, i.e., ruminates. And then
Yes.
she goes, I could have been a little better in that situation and I wasn't. So she goes to rectify the situation, kind of like what sends her to check on Penn in
Yes.
that drawing room scene is when she realizes the way that
Yes.
Colin's talking, Colin has not seen Penn. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, like nobody's talked to Penn, even though they're not friends right now, she feels like a bad friend because nobody's checked on her. And she thought with her and Colin hanging out and doing stuff that was a way for Penn to still have a friend, like she said in the carriage. At least Penn still has somebody. But if
Yeah.
Colin was not seeing her, she had nobody. And Eloise could
You
not
could
let her be
tell the
alone.
entire time that Eloise just needed a lot of time to process what had happened. But I think even she knew that they were always going to come back together, and she could not allow her
Yeah.
friend to be hurting in the meantime because she, even though she was mad, she still cared enough that she needed someone to be checking in, someone to be taking care of her. But this is when Cressida
Yeah.
shares how touched she is that it's her first time ever having a friend call upon her. And the girls are kind of bonding over that when they hear the raised voice of Lord Cowper, clearly dismayed at a friend, like, how dare you have a friend? We do not have friends, we have competition, calling during a time period that was designed only for marriage prospects. And like, you have no marriage prospect, and now you have a female calling upon you. What is this disgusting? Like, he is
That's what I
disgusted.
think it is. I don't think it's like we don't have friends, they're competition. I think that is totally a
I think it's
narrative
both.
I think that was totally a narrative that was brought on by Araminta. And
Yeah.
I think that Lord Cowper's thing is we cannot look at how he was when he got kicked out of his club when she announced she was Lady Whistledown. Like she was such a disappointment. This is, oh my goodness, if a female was up during calling hours, what are the
Yeah.
neighbors going to think? Like I totally view that as, and she was just called out in Whistledown last season for being
Yes.
a activist kind of person, like
Yeah.
a rebel. Like, no, this
Well,
is not good. This is
yeah.
not good news.
Because Lord Cowper comes in and then completely dismisses Eloise. And I mean, granted, I do know that in the hierarchy, he can talk to her however he wishes, but she is still she's not a lady, but she's a miss from a very proper home, and there's probably still some sort of protocol that he's meant to follow that he definitely does not follow. And dismisses Eloise so that he can berate his daughter. He doesn't even bother to make sure that Eloise is out of earshot. He doesn't shut the door. He
Mm-mm.
doesn't. He doesn't have any sort of privacy. It's almost as if he wants her to
No,
hear
because
what.
he wants her to hear.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
tells that she is not to be seen with that Bridgerton girl anymore. Clearly, Eloise's swelled reputation from last season is still following her more than she had. I think she probably thought, hey, like I'm making friends. The mamas don't seem to be like talking behind my back, like they've moved on to other things. Maybe this is behind me now. And this was just kind of a glaring smack to the face of, oh, my reputation is still following me. And now it might have cost me the one friend that I do currently have.
See, and I see it differently because I think that he is very much more worried about himself and his family name and their own reputation. That I think he purposely did not wait for her to fully leave. He wanted her to hear because
He's a
he doesn't
sadist.
feel he doesn't feel like he has any control over his daughter. That
Yeah.
her upbringing is completely in Aramenta's field, and he
Yeah.
is disappointed in how Aramenta's doing it. So he's creating a situation because the Bridgertons are outwardly in society like they always land on their feet, right?
Yes.
So because he doesn't think he can keep Cressida from hanging out with her, he is attempting to get her scared enough that she doesn't come poking around. And look what happens at the Queen's Ball.
I mean,
he hides herself in one of those booths and she doesn't seek out Cressida.
even look at the way that his daughter is dressed. I'm sure that he finds that repulsive. Like he probably knows that young debutantes need to be dressed in light clothing because otherwise they are seen as tainted or maybe touched or all the sexist, gross kind of bigotry.
Yeah, because women of the night wore darker colors.
Yes.
Dark
So,
dark
like,
greens, dark reds.
it's quite interesting that the way that he dresses his wife. I think she's specifically told how to dress. I don't think that is necessarily her choice because her daughter has free reign to dress however she wants because she's on the marriage mat. So I think that Araminta kind of lives vicariously through her daughter and her clothing choices as well.
No, the mama says how they dress.
That's what
Everything that Cressida.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So Araminta's not allowed to dress the way that she wants, so she lives vicariously through Cressida by dressing her the way that she wishes to.
But what we now know about Lord Cowper and how he feels about color and bright color versus and what we know about the ton and color choices of what women wear, I am very, very interested in when we get there in breaking down the red butterfly dress because that is
a lot of symbolism.
Like Araminta is purposely tainting her daughter's reputation to get that money.
Yeah.
Like they don't give a crap about Cressida at all.
No. Her daughter is a pawn in both of her parents. But for today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there and continue on next week's episode. If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover or any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. And if you're enjoying our podcast, please remember to click follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. Additionally, we are now over on Patreon. We will chuck the link into this week's bio and also onto our Facebook page as well. I've heard that a few people didn't even realize that we were on Patreon. As a Patreon exclusive, you get to have your name shout out. Thanks for sponsoring us. You will get to have access to all of our notes, and as I said earlier, I write very extensive notes. Tell me you're a type A personality without telling me. You will see it straight in my notes, even though I do tend to write them very late at night when I'm exhausted. They're still somewhat cohesive. So if you want to jump over onto Patreon, we will add links in all of our bios for you to go find it there. You can also have your Bridgerton story read, as well as Patty is putting together a quarterly Ladies Bridgerton words, Patty.
Society papers.
I'm like, I know there are more words. I don't know what they are. We are also now over on YouTube. We did take a wee break from that because obviously we have been on holidays and just keeping up with our regular episodes was kind of a stretch as it was. We will be adding new content hopefully today over onto there. So please head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe there for exclusive content. If you subscribe, it will tell you every time that we upload new content. Over to you, Patty.
So thank you for listening to the musings of two mad women.
Yours truly, Tosh the Kiwi.
And Lady Patty.